Guys, we see the user defined exception in this video. Now see, first we see the predefined, non-predefined, and here we see the user defined exception. Now what is the difference between that exception? Predefined is defined by the oracle, non-predefined only the code is defined by the oracle, not the name. And what is the user defined exception? User defined exception is totally depend on the user. Suppose user want to raise the exception which depend on that user condition, at that time user can raise that user defined exception. Okay, now here see, often in your program you may need to handle the problem that are specific to the program you write. Okay, means depend on the programmer when programmer want to raise that exception. For example, your program asks a user to enter a value for a student ID. This value is then assigned to the variable v underscore student underscore id that is used later in a program. Clear? This is one scenario. Generally you want to positive number, but mistakenly user enter the negative. So this is the user requirement. What is the programmer requirement? Only enter the positive value, but user suppose pass the negative. This is not a valid value for the programmer. So here what is the programmer want? Programmer want to raise one exception and display one valid message to that user screen that please enter the positive number only. So this is the programmer condition, that when any user pass the negative then raise the exception. So such type of exception is managed by the user. Okay, programmer. So this is the user defined exception. Therefore you may want to implement your own exception to handle this situation. Okay, now see in the next slide we see. So for that we always write a user defined exception because it defined by the programmer. Before the exception can be used, it must be declared. It's a mandatory. Clear? Now a user defined exception is declared in the declaration part of a PLSQL block. See here, exception name and the exception. In the non-predefined exception we see that this is the exception and this is the data type with that exception name. Okay, now once the exception has been declared, the executable statements associated with this exception are specified in the exception handling section to that block. One exception name is declared, at that time you can use that exception name into your exception section. Okay, now see, so this is something about your user defined exception. Now let's create one example with that user defined exception. Now suppose, what is my task? Suppose here I want to create one user defined exception. Let's create one file user defined. Okay, now let's create one user defined exception with procedure creator replace procedure. Suppose my procedure name is user defined. Okay, declaration part starts. Now what is my first task? First declare the exception name. Suppose exception array. This is my exception name. What is the data type? What is the data type? Exception. Clear? So this is the declaration of your exception. Clear? Now then let's start your executable. Suppose let's declare again one variable. Suppose cell number. Suppose cell number. Okay, now starts your executable part. Now see, so here we fired one select statement which stored the salary. Okay, select salary into cell from employee where employee underscore id equal to suppose id. This is in parameter which I want to pass to the header section. This is id number. Clear? So this is my select statement. Now with the help of that select statement, we simply stored the value into the cell. Now see, what is my task? Now programmer task is, now the programmer condition is that suppose anyone have salary greater than 10,000 and suppose I am trying to give the hike to that employee. So please raise one exception, and your exception is that please don't give hike to that employee, it's already greater than 10,000. So it's a user requirement or a programmer requirement. Clear? It's a programmer requirement that please do not hike any employee whose salary is greater than 10,000. So how we manage it? If sal. Clear? Now my salary is into sal. If sal is greater than 10,000, then what? Then raise exception underscore raise. Now see, raise. Here we use the raise keyword. Now see, suppose I want to raise the user define exception. At that time, user define exception is always raised with that raise keyword. Please note this thing, okay? User define exception is always raised with that raise exception. Okay, see, raise keyword. Clear? Now here we use the raise keyword to raise that exception raise. Now when, see, if anyone have the salary greater than 10,000, then immediately raise your user define exception. Okay? Now suppose else part is, suppose my else part is, what is my else part? I want to give, suppose the salary is less than 10,000, then please hike sal colon equal to sal into hike by 10%. Clear? This is my task. Immediately here we display, let's display the salary over here. TBMS underscore output dot put underscore line sal. Clear? And also apply one DBMS over here into the else part. DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line and again sal. Clear? So here display the salary which greater than 10,000 and here display the salary increment by 10%. Now end of if. Clear? End of here. Now see, exception block starts. How we manage? When exception underscore raise, then what is my action? My action is then ms underscore output dot put underscore line and one message. My message is, suppose please cannot hike the salary. Okay, so when the cursor is moved into your exception part, then this message will display on the programmer screen. Okay, show error, set server output on. Okay, now when the cursor is moved into your exception part, when salary is greater than 10,000, let's compile it. Procedure created. Now execute user underscore define. Okay, suppose I am pass 120. Now let's see what happened. It's 880. It's hiked by 10%. Okay, first let's see what is the salary of that 180. Select salary from employees where employee underscore id equal to 120 semicolon. It's 800, so it's definitely hiked by 10%. Clear? Let's put one insert statement, one dbms into your now. Again, suppose 140. So what is the basic salary? It's 25,000, 2,500, again less than 10,000, then it immediately hike by 10%. Okay, this is the old one and this is the old one and this is your new one. Okay, now 100. Now here raise your exception. Now what is your exception? 24,000. So this is not hike here by your 10%, because when salary is greater than 10,000, then it immediately transfer to your exception block and it display the message that cannot hike the salary. So this is how we manage our user defined exception, means depend on the user or a programmer requirement. Clear? So this is about the user defined exception. Thank you.